Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in our series of March of the Machine Commander deck techs. I'm covering every legendary creature from March of the Machine's main set in no particular order, plus the extra legends from Mom Jumpstart, the special pre-release promos. I may even do the non-face legends from the March of the Machine Commander products, if there's interest. So if you have a request for a particular commander or a way you'd like to see me build them into a deck, let me know in the comments below. As you can see today, our commander is Errant and Giada, respectively a graffiti artist who works with Halo, and the source of the Cabaretti's Halo in the New Capenna story. During the Phyrexian invasion, Giada invisibly helped Errant in her role in the Resistance, most especially when she blew up Park Heights and crushed Atraxa by dropping a building on her. I want to say something like talk about street justice, but the truth is, I love New Capenna, and this card is a sweet intersection of style, flexibility, and power that you can build into something for experienced players or new players alike. But before we get into the way that I built it, let's talk about my deck building template. I always build around my commander. I want to show off how cool it is and the reason I put it at the head of my deck. So I allocate 30 cards to my game plan. It's what I want to do while I'm playing it and how I try to win. 30 more cards go into these categories of support: card advantage like draw spells, acceleration like ramp, and interaction like spot removal. I'll do some mass removal as well in the form of 1 or 2 wraths. Sometimes I do 0, sometimes I do more if it would play into the game plan. And then I have a floor of 38 lands because I want to cast my spells, and hitting my land drops is the way to do that. So let's take a look at our commander. Errant and Giada is a 2/3 human angel with flash and flying for 1 a white and a blue. That also lets us look at the top card of our library at any time and gives us the ability to cast spells with flash and flying from the top of our library. So if you are thinking this is a flash flyers deck, you get a gold star. Flying is one of the best mechanics in the game, so we are decked out with flying friends to soar over our opponent's boards and deliver a real beating of wings. Our flash spells are also of a feather, surprising our pod with unexpected threats and answers. We also have ways to give flash to our other spells too, so this is a classic blue-white strategy of holding up mana, spending in our opponent's turns, or just dumping in our turns for something that they can't handle. We build up our aerial army with anthems and tokens, then we swoop in for the win. It's a classic play pattern. We aren't here to look down at our opponents, just to elevate the game. You'll enjoy this deck if you like alternating between reactive and proactive playstyles, or if you just like taking to the skies. So let's get into our game plan and talk first about our flyers. We've got 29 cards tagged with flying. I should make mention, as usual, that if you take a look at this Moxfield page, the link of which is in the description of this video, you'll see at the bottom there's a section called Considering. These are other cards you might want to choose if you have more of a budget or less of a budget, if you want to go in one particular direction or a different one from what I chose. They're all there for you. A lot of the work is done, so you are welcome. We're going to start with Mockingbird, which is not actually a 1-drop. It costs X and a blue for a 1/1 bird bard with flying. Look how great this guy is. He's a bard. Laughing at you? No, I'm laughing as you. Ha 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 ha. So, Mockingbird is a clone spell. You may have Mockingbird enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value less than or equal to the amount of mana spent to cast Mockingbird, except it's a bird and has flying. So, Mockingbird, notably, it's not a copy of something with mana value X or less. It's a copy of something with mana value equal to the amount of mana you spent or less, which means the blue is included in that. So if we wanted to copy, say, this Skycast Sovereign, X would only have to be 1 for the Mockingbird, because then it would be mana value 2. Mockingbird, we'd be spending 2 on it with X equal to 1. So putting clone spells in blue decks always feels like a great way to supplement what we're doing. But remember, Mockingbird can also copy other creatures on the battlefield. So if it's late game, let's say, and our opponent has their big 7-mana commander out, and it's getting a lot of value for them, we could pump 6 mana into the Mockingbird, or 6 mana into X for the Mockingbird, and make a flying version of their commander, which maybe we even can flash it out if Mockingbird's on top of our library, thanks to our commander's effect. Next we have Spectral Sailor, which is a flyer that already has flash. It costs a single blue for a 1/1 Spirit Pirate that has, like I said, flash and flying, and it also has 3 and a blue, draw a card. So this is a great way for us to get out an early threat, to get something off the top of our library at flash speed, or just to have a flyer out. And then later, we can spend our mana to draw cards if we're not using it for anything else. Maybe we've held up some interaction, and it gets back to us, we weren't able to use it, we can at least dump it into Spectral Sailor and put more cards in our hand. Next we have Ornithopter of Paradise. For 2 generic mana, we get an Artifact Thopter. That's a 0/2 flyer, but we can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. So this, look at this cute bird. I really love the Ornithopter of Paradise art. This is a mana rock we can cast off the top of our library. It's a creature, so we can't, tap it right when it comes down, but being able to get mana dorks directly off the top and just keep playing off the top after that, hopefully, that sounds like a lot of fun. Plus, if we need to block with it, it's an 0/2. Birds of Paradise has blocked plenty of things in the past, so our Ornithopter of Paradise can join that rank. Skycat Sovereign is next. It's a 2 mana 1/1 elemental cat for a white and a blue. It has flying, and it gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with flying. And if you want to pump out some tokens, for 2 a white and a blue, you can make a 1/1 white cat bird creature token with flying. So Skycat Sovereign looks like a 1/1 flyer. It's usually, a 4/4 flyer, an 8/8 flyer. It becomes pretty big. And like I mentioned for Spectral Sailor, it's a good mana sink. If we need to use up our mana, we don't have spells we want to cast with it, or maybe it is someone else's turn, and we have a creature on the top of our library, but it's not a flash creature, we can just pump in Skycat Sovereign and have not just a bunch more tokens that fly, but also our Sovereign becomes bigger with each one. But what if we want all of our flyers to be bigger? Empyrean Eagle is 1 a white and a blue for a 2/3 bird spirit with flying. That gives all of our flyers +1/+1. I mentioned there's some Anthems in this deck. We will get to them soon, but Empyrean Eagle is one of them. If it seems threatening to have a bunch of creatures that can block your creatures, but you can't block, imagine if one creature comes down and all of those creatures get bigger. I don't think I really need to make a case for why Anthems are good, but Empyrean Eagle is here for us. Next is Final Word Phantom from the Murders at Karlov Manor Commander products. This card is great, not just because it's Columbo. For 2 and a blue, we get a 1/4 flash flying spirit detective that says during each opponent's end step, you may cast spells as though they had flash. So this is Leyline of Anticipation on a body, but only during our opponent's end steps. Which, well, that means we can't flash in a blocker during their combat, but we sure can flash in a blocker during the opponent before them's turn. So yeah, Final Word Phantom as a good way to give us more flash is great, and also it's a 1/4 flyer. That's often an okay blocker. Jubilant Skybonder from originally Ikoria is 1 and 2 hybrid Azorius mana for a 2/2 flying human wizard that says creatures you control with flying have spells your opponents cast that target this creature cost 2 more to cast. So this is not Ward 2. This is an additional cost to the casting cost of a spell, to the total cost of a spell. So if someone wants to try and, kill our Final Word Phantom before we can use it to flash things in, well, that's crazy because we can play at flash speed. But let's say they wanted to. If Jubilant Skybonder's out and they have 2 mana up and they're casting Doomblade, well, that's their 2 mana, and so they can't cast it at all. With Ward, they would be able to cast it and then it would get countered if they couldn't pay the Ward cost. This is an additional cost. But it protects all of our flyers just for 3 mana, and it comes with a 2/2 flying body. So this is a Wind Drake that helps everyone. Sounds good. Next up is Skyhunter Strike Force. For 2 and a white, we get a 2/2 flying cat knight with melee. Melee means when this creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked this combat. So that means if this is the only thing attacking, that means we can only attack one opponent, so it's going to get +1/+1. But if we have this and 2 other creatures, all of which are attacking different opponents, then the Skyhunter Strike Force will get +3/+3, because that's 3 opponents we've attacked. That's important because this has Lieutenant. As long as we control our commander, other creatures we control have melee. So we attack with the Skyhunter Strike Force, we attack with the Skybonder, we attack with the Phantom. All of them go at different things. All of them get +3/+3. That seems like a lot of fun. Next up, Vega the Watcher. Vega is terrific in this deck. Originally from Kaldheim, for 1 a white and a blue, we have a 2/2 bird spirit with flying that says whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card. The top of our library is not our hand. So our commander lets us cast spells that have flash or flying from the top of our library, and when we do, if Vega is on the battlefield, we then draw the next card. That's not just good because it puts more cards on our hand, even though that's great, but if we have some kind of selection mechanic where we could maybe scry 2, let's say, we put a flash flyer on top of our library, and then something we wouldn't be able to cast with our commander next. We cast the first one, it triggers Vega, we draw the one after that. And now, what's next on top of our library? It might be another flash flyer. So by drawing a card, we have access to more cards than just the one we drew, thanks to our commander. Great synergy in this deck. Next we have Emeria Angel. 2 and double white for a 3/3 flying angel with landfall. Whenever a land enters under our control, we can create a 1/1 bird with flying. It's a token. Does it do much for us? Well, it might. If Skyhunter Strike Force is out, we can attack with those birds and they might become 4/4s. Those are angels. And of course, Emeria Angel itself would be a 6/6 in that same case. So yeah, being able to clog up the sky with birds, we're not really trying to go wide exactly, but in a way we are. So this lets us go a little wider, if not taller. The taller comes from other cards. Next we have Fireman Commando, another angel. For 3 and a white, we have a 4/3 Angel Soldier with flying that says whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, which I guess if we're going wide, we will be, draw a card. And whenever another player attacks with 2 or more creatures, they draw a card if none of those creatures are attacking you. If none of those creatures attacked you. So you could still have creatures coming at you if, for example, they attack with something and they have an effect that triggers that says put a token that's tapped and attacking onto the battlefield. And if that can come at you, then of course you have something attacking you that wasn't declared as an attacker. But in any case, this softly encourages our opponents to attack each other if they want card draw. Sometimes that's disadvantageous to them and they won't do it, but a lot of the time it's just up to who they think they can get in on. We're going to have a lot of things that can block. So even if we're equally preferable to someone else, Fireman Commando should push them over the fence to go after the other person because they draw a card, and we don't even draw a card off of that. A lot of times these are sort of symmetrical, like the Curse of Hospitality type effects. It would be we would draw a card and they would, but not so. Anyway, Fireman Commando, a good source of card draw for us, and sometimes we might be able to use it a little politically to prevent us from getting to be the defending player that turn. Next up is High Fate Trickster from Foundations. Beautiful card. I'm convinced this comes from Eldraine. I love Eldraine. This is a 3 and a blue 4/2 fairy wizard with flash and flying that says you may cast spells as though they had flash. It doesn't even have to be during our opponent's end step like Final Word Phantom. This is just Ley Line of Anticipation on a 4/2 flying body. So we cast the Trickster, maybe off the top. We cast the next thing off the top. It doesn't have to be during our turn. That's pretty good. Next up is Malleable Imposter from the Wilds of Eldraine Commander product. For 3 and a blue, we get a 0/0 Fairy Shapeshifter with flash and flying, but we may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature an opponent controls, except that it's a Fairy Shapeshifter in addition to its other types, and it has flying. So obviously, we're not going to have this come in as just a 0/0. We're going to pick the biggest, scariest, toughest, most annoying creature on the battlefield that isn't on our playmat and make a flying copy of it. 4 mana, but it has flash, and that's great, especially if it's something like, we're using this to block one opponent's creature that they chose to send at us because they were afraid that they couldn't send it at a different opponent. We make it into that creature that the different opponent controls. So, haha, we got you. Next is Restoration Angel. Everyone loves Resto Angel. For 3 and a white, we get a 3/4 flash flying angel that says when it enters, you may exile target non-angel creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Now, Errant and Giada is an angel, right? Yes, a human angel. So we can't flicker them with Resto Angel, but we sure can hit Vega or High Fate Trickster or Malleable Imposter. We can hit anything we want with a great enters trigger, or something that we want to just protect. Restoration Angel, even just as a 3/4 flyer with flash, those are okay stats. So we might want to, for example, reset our Malleable Imposter. Maybe it was something good last turn, and now it's just not what we need. So maybe during our opponent's end step, we flash in Resto Angel, flicker the Malleable Imposter, and make it a copy of whatever big threat our opponents have just played since then. That's not a bad pattern. Another angel is Thraben Watcher. For 2 and double white, we have a 2/2 angel with flying and vigilance that gives other non-token creatures we control +1/+1 in vigilance. So it won't help out our birds, but it will help out basically every card in this section. And all the ones that aren't flyers too. So we've got 38 creatures in this deck. This is going to give all of them vigilance and +1/+1. So more Anthems. Speaking of which, Thunderclap Wyvern is 2, a white, and a blue for a 2/3 flash flying Drake that gives all of our other creatures with flying +1/+1. So you're seeing all the Anthems probably right now. I don't know if I have any more at the end to show you, but being able to pump up all of our stuff, it's pretty clear why that's good. Next up we have Windborne Muse, a way to protect ourselves. For 3 and a white, it's a 2/3 spirit with flying that says creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 generic mana for each creature they control that's attacking you. So Windborne Muse is Ghostly Prison on a body. It's a flyer that we can flash in if we have something that's giving our flyers flash. You know, like our High Fate Trickster. Even if we don't flash it in, it's still pretty great. It means that our opponents have to choose a lot of the time between casting spells or attacking us, or trying to mix between the two. But if we could flash this in, maybe they cast a bunch of spells pre-combat, which a lot of players do, then we flash this in during the beginning of combat step, and now they have to say, oh, we were planning on attacking, but we don't have any more mana to do it, so I guess we have to pass. That's not just helpful to us, it might be helpful to the rest of the table, so we can do this in a sort of like, let's make a deal political way. Like, hey, I can stop this player from attacking. If I do that, will you not spend your turns subsequently attacking me, at least for one turn cycle? And they'll be like, well, if you've got a way to stop them from attacking, you say, sure. You drop this down, now they can't attack you. That's a little bit sneaky, but who knows? Maybe you can convince them anyway. Regardless, we've got Fairy Formation. For 4 and a blue, it's a 5/4 flying fairy from Throne of Eldraine that says for 3 and a blue, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying and draw a card. So as opposed to our Skycat Sovereign that was asking us for 4 mana to make a 1/1 flyer, the Fairy Formation is asking us for 4 mana to make a 1/1 flyer and to get a card out of it. So another great mana sink and a good way to fill up our skies. Githzerai Monk from Baldur's Gate is 4 and a white for a 3/2 Gith Monk with flash and flying that says whenever it enters the battlefield, tap all creatures you don't control. This is the real way, without being really tricksy, to do that deal I said with Windborne Muse. We say, hey, I can stop this guy from, or this opponent I should say, from being able to attack this turn. Will you agree not to come at me during your turns? And they might say yes, and if they do, flash in your monk, and you're going to be able to tap down everyone's creatures. Maybe you swing in then. That wasn't part of the deal, but you could swing in anyway. And then that player, oh, I guess this is during their turn, so maybe you're not swinging in. It's been a bit of a day. In any case, Githzerai Monk is a great way to clear the field for you if you have opponents with flying blockers, or blockers on the ground when you have creatures that don't fly. And it can, like I said, just open things up for you or for maybe your opponents. You might say, look, I can make it so this guy, the opponent A is not going to be able to block. If you attack on your turn, opponent B, will you agree to do that rather than coming at me? If they say yes, tap everything down. Opponent B's turn will start with them untapping their creatures, and they can swing in. Next up is Smirking Spelljacker from the Thunder Junction Commander product. 4 and a blue for a 3/3 Djinn Wizard Rogue with flash and flying, so we got a lot of flash flyers. That says when it enters the battlefield, exile target spell an opponent controls. Remember, a spell is a card on the stack. And whenever Smirking Spelljacker attacks, if a card is exiled with it, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. That's pretty sweet. It gets rid of maybe a removal spell, something that's targeting us. It maybe can get rid of a really big creature. Maybe they put their Crater Hoof on the stack, and they're expecting to swing in and win. We flash in our Spelljacker, jack their spell, and then whenever we attack on our next turn, we might be able to cast that card for free if we want to. But of course, if it's a removal spell or a counter spell, maybe we don't want to. We can always just keep it back and cast it another time if it's useful to us. Anyway, 3/3 Flash Flyer, that's all right. Next up is Windshaper Planetar, also from Baldur's Gate. 4 and a white for a Flash Flying Angel, that's a 4/4. It says, whenever it enters during the Declare Attacker step, for each attacking creature, you may reselect which player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. We have 1 or 2 of these effects in the deck, and they're really cool. So our opponent decides to play their Crater Hoof and come at us. We play the Planetar. We flash it in after they've declared attackers, but before blockers are declared. That's during the Declare Attacker step. And then we get to choose for all of their attacking creatures if they're attacking a different player or a planeswalker one of those other players is attacking. We can also use this politically because those things don't have to be attacking us when we flash this in. We can say, hey, opponent B, I can save you from this attack from opponent A. Will you agree that it's just you and me? That we want the game to be the 2 of us in the end, and we don't want to attack each other at all until opponents A and C are gone. And if they say, well, I'm going to die otherwise, so I agree to your terms, flash in the Windshaper, change all of those attacking creatures to attack opponent C instead of opponent B. And now we've got a great deal with opponent B. Opponent C might be out of the game. Opponent A is done attacking for this turn. Unless, of course, they have extra combats, but you know how it is. And yeah, we've got a 4/4 flyer. It's all right. Next up, this is really fun. Archetype of Imagination. 4 and double blue for a 3/2 human wizard that says creatures you control have flying, creatures your opponents control lose flying, and can't have or gain flying. So I want to make note, this says creatures you control have flying, which means this has flying. It also says all of our opponent's creatures can't have or gain flying, they lose flying, which means all of our creatures that fly, which is to say all of them, are unblockable except by creatures with reach. That's pretty all right. Maybe one of our opponents is playing green, that's fine. We might have some reachers we have to deal with, but every one of our creatures is getting in otherwise. So Archetype of Imagination, yeah, it's not necessarily all of your creatures are unblockable, but a lot of the time it's going to be. Next is Dream Trawler. Love this card from Theros Beyond Death. 2 double white and double blue for a 3/5 Sphinx with flying and lifelink. It says whenever you draw a card, this gets +1 to its power until end of turn. And whenever it attacks, draw a card. So that next ability, the whenever it attacks ability, triggers the whenever you draw a card ability. It also says discard a card to give it hexproof until end of turn and tap it. So if you use that during combat when it's already been declared as an attacker, it's already tapped. So you can still use the ability because it only requires you discard a card, and it doesn't tap it anymore, it just remains tapped. Dream Trawler can get out of hand very quickly, and it's just really dangerous. Good times. Next up is Transcendent Dragon from the Tarkir Dragonstorm Commander product. For 4 and double blue, we have a 4/3 dragon with flash and flying that says whenever this creature enters, or when this creature enters, if you cast it, counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard, then you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So it's sort of Smirking Spelljacker, but with a little bit better stats, and you don't have to wait until the creature attacks in order to cast it for free. Transcendent Dragon just says, when it enters, counter a spell, and then put it into exile, and you can cast it from exile right now. Seems pretty good for me. I think that that's really fun for a big creature, really fun for a big haymaking enchantment, or a like a fireball type effect. Seems like you can do a lot with this. The only thing you wouldn't want to do with this, with either of these, even if it was like a counter spell. You probably wouldn't want to do a counter spell with Transcendent Dragon since you're casting it right away, but you probably would not want to use this on an X spell, a spell with X in the cost, because when you cast it then, you're casting it without paying its mana cost, so X has to be 0. May not be as good. Next is Angel of the Dire Hour. 5 and double white for a 5/4 angel with flash and flying that says when it enters, if you cast it from your hand, exile all attacking creatures. This is a 5/4 flash flyer that does a pretty good imitation of Settle the Wreckage. So if we're getting attacked with that elf ball player and their Crater Hoof and their million elves, flash in your angel, exile all their attacking creatures. Maybe they put their commander back in the command zone, but doesn't matter. You've got a 5/4 flyer and your stuff is fine. It also says exile all attacking creatures. It doesn't say exile all creatures attacking you. So again, you can use this politically. You can say, you've seen me use a couple of other creatures that help some of my friends. Do you trust me to make this deal with me and I can save you from this attack? And if that player says yes, flash in your Angel of the Dire Hour, exile all the creatures attacking that player, and there you go. Keep in mind, you can use this on anyone else's turn as well. So next is Herald of the Eternal Dawn. Really exciting card that we've seen in Foundations. For 4 and triple white, we get a 6/6 angel with flash and flying that says you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. This is our Platinum Angel for the deck. And you'll notice we have a lot of angels in this deck. We could have put the original Giada in this deck. She is in the considering section, I believe. I didn't put her in here for the same reason I didn't put the original Errant in here, just because I want to be able to showcase the actual version of that character. But it would be good. Just, it's not an angels deck though. So anyway, Herald of the Eternal Dawn, we flash it in when our opponent is attacking us for lethal. Let's say we don't block. They do something crazy. We're going to take 1,000,000 damage and die. Flash in the Herald of the Eternal Dawn. We take 1,000,000 damage and don't die, because normally taking that damage would cause us to lose the game, but we can't lose the game. In addition, our opponents have Approach of the Second Sun or something along those lines. They use it the second time and it doesn't work because they can't win the game. Herald of Eternal Dawn. There we go. Just like any Platinum Angel effect, is great because it becomes a must-kill threat, you know? And it's not much of a threat. It's a 6/6 flyer. That's not bad. But we don't have to do anything with it other than protect it. And if we do that, our opponents are stuck being unable to win the game until they get us out somehow, and we can't lose the game. So this is a great piece of removal bait. It at least gives us a little bit of respite when it looks like we might be losing the game or we might need to stop our opponent from winning. And then until they can get rid of it, our opponents are just going to have to sit there and wait while we work toward our win. How do we protect Herald of the Eternal Dawn? May I introduce Sephara, Sky's Blade. For the same cost, 4 and triple white, we have a legendary angel that is a 7/7 with flying and lifelink, and other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. So that would mean our Herald of the Eternal Dawn, our Archetype of Imagination, all of our flyers, indestructible. Sephara herself is not, but she's a 7/7 flyer, and it's one of these great effects that says to people, yes, you can get rid of the card that's bothering you, but you have to go through this one first. Do you have 2 forms of removal? But not just that, Sephara has an alternate casting cost. We can just pay a single white and tap 4 untapped creatures with flying, and Sephara comes right in. Now, if there is an effect we have in play, like High Fae Trickster, that says we can cast spells as though they had flash, then we can do this at instant speed. Maybe if we have High Fae Trickster on the battlefield, Sephara might be on top of our library. We've got 1 mana up and a few blockers. Our opponents swing in, we pay the 1 mana, tap 4 of our flying creatures, and flash Sephara in off the top of our library. All of our other creatures have indestructible. We can even block something that's not that big with Sephara and gain life from it. Lots of fun. Finally, in this section, oh, maybe not finally, second to last, is Absolute Virtue from the Final Fantasy set. For 6, a white and a blue, we get an 8/8 legendary Avatar Warrior with flying that cannot be countered, and it says you have protection from each of your opponents, which means we can't be dealt damage, enchanted, or targeted by anything controlled by our opponents. None of our opponent's spells can do damage to us. None of them can target us. It doesn't affect our creatures, but we don't have to worry about our creatures if we've got Absolute Virtue protecting us. And it's an 8/8 flyer. That's pretty great. Last up, we have a non-creature spell, but you'll see why. For 10 mana, 8 and double white, it's a sorcery that creates a number of 1/1 white Pegasus creature tokens with flying equal to our life total. So if maybe we're beaten down to just 18 life or 15 life, we cast this for 10 mana and we now have 15 or 18 1/1 flyers. If we have a couple of Anthem effects, those flyers are bigger. In any case, it buys us some time, and unless we're facing down a whole bunch of trampling creatures, it's a lot of chump blockers, which maybe we need while we're waiting to draw our Herald of Eternal Dawn, or something else that can win us the game with that. But we have a few sources of lifelink in this deck. What if we get 40 Pegasi? Pegasuses? Pegasi? Whatever they are. 40 of those on the battlefield. We swing into someone, that might be the end of the game for them. Stormherd is a big spell, and it's always fun to watch it happen. Either you're going to win, or someone's going to take you out, and you will lose with, dozens of Pegasus in the air. That's really fun. So we've seen our flyers. Let's look at our flashers. Maybe not that. We've seen Spectral Sailor. We can flash it in. Cathar Commando also has flash. 1 and a white for a 3/1 human soldier that says for a generic and sacrifice it, destroy an artifact or enchantment. So this is our disenchant for the deck. It costs a little more because it costs 3 mana, 1 and a generic and a white to flash it in, and then another generic to destroy something, but at least we have it. And if we need to flash this in off the top of our library, we're able to do that too. Next is Aboleth Spawn. I think this card is really cool from the Baldur's Gate set. For 2 and a blue, we get a 2/3 Flash Fish Horror with Ward for 2 generic. That also has Probing Telepathy. Whenever a creature entering the battlefield under an opponent's control causes a triggered ability of that creature to trigger, you may copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So if someone has a creature that says, when this enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each of your creatures, we get that trigger as well. If they say, when this creature enters, you may destroy target creature an opponent controls, we get that trigger as well. It just seems really cool. And kind of a weird card. I don't think I've seen this ability anywhere else. So it's something that people might say, I don't like that. I have a Panharmonicon deck. I don't want you getting a bunch of the same triggers I'm getting because I built my deck around enters triggers. So Aboleth Spawn becomes a 3 mana piece of removal bait. That's pretty good. Next is Amphibian Downpour from Modern Horizons 3. I really think this spell is cool. For 2 and a blue, we have an aura with flash and with storm, which we'll talk about in a moment, that says enchant creature. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a blue frog creature with base power and toughness 1/1. So, on its face, for 3 mana, we're turning something into a 1/1 with no abilities. That's not that great of an effect. I mean, we can do that for 1 or 2 mana in different ways with a lot of other spells, some of which are in the considering section in this deck. I wanted at least one of these though, and Amphibian Downpour is the best one because it has Storm, which means when we cast this, we make a copy of it for each spell cast before this turn. So if this is the second spell we've cast, or second spell being cast this turn, we get a second copy of it. If it's the 4th one, we get 3 other copies beyond this. We get a number of total instances of this on the stack, whether they're copies or the original aura, equal to whatever rank it is in the queue, if you want to think of it that way. So if our opponent's really going off and they've cast 6 creature spells this turn, we can cast this and put Amphibian Downpour, or a copy of it, on all 6 of those creatures plus 1 more. This just helps us turn off our opponent's big value creatures, turn off their commanders especially. Yes, they can remove the aura, but we've gotten a lot more than just the 1 off of it typically. And even if we just get the 1 to turn off someone's commander, that's not terrible. Yeah, so being able to cast a storm spell at flash, a permanent storm spell at flash, that seems like a lot of fun. Next is Dictate of Krufix. For 1 and double blue, we have an enchantment with flash that says at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. This is great for everyone, right? Well, but we can flash it in on our opponent to our right's end step, which means we get the first benefit from it. We draw 2 cards. Then it'll be true for everyone after that. But we could do this off the top of our library as well. Pretty good. And extra card draw, like I talked about on some of our other spells, means clearing cards off the top of our library that we might have wanted to cast, but weren't able to because they didn't have flash or flying. We've seen the Final Word Phantom, which gives our spells flash. We have Twin Blade Blessing, another aura with flash for 1 and double white that enchants a creature and gives enchanted creature double strike. So we swing in with our flyers, we don't get blocked, and suddenly we're doing twice as much damage with one of those flyers. Pretty cool. We've seen High Phase Trickster, how it gives our spells flash, and Malleable Imposter, how it has flash and can copy something. Now for Portal Manipulator. Portal Manipulator is so cool. This is from the Clue set. For 2 and 2 hybrid Azorius mana, we have a 3/2 human wizard with flash that says when it enters during the declare attacker step, choose target player and any number of target attacking creatures their opponents control. Those creatures are now attacking that player. So this is a little bit different from the effect we saw earlier. Essentially what we're doing is we say, oh, it's the declare attacker step, no blockers have been declared. I'm going to choose opponent A because opponent B is attacking. It doesn't matter who opponent B is attacking. I now get to choose any number of opponent B's creatures that are attacking, and now they're attacking opponent A. So that just seems fun. Again, we can use this politically, like I mentioned before in the previous thing, but even if not, we can use this against our opponent and straight off the top of our library. We've seen Restoration Angel. Now let's look at Thistledown Liege, the best Anthem effect in the deck. For 1 and triple Azorius hybrid mana, we get a 1/3 Kithkin Knight with flash, so we can flash this in to surprise everyone, that says other white creatures you control get +1/+1, and other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. I know you're wondering, but what about creatures like our commander that are both? Well, they get +2/+2 because they're white and they're blue. These are 2 separate abilities. So big effect that does a lot more for us than it first seems, and again, we can flash it in. And I've talked several times about flashing things in off the top of our library. Flash is just as good out of our hand. So Thistledown Liege can come in and surprise people who wanted to get rid of our Portal Manipulator, let's say, which is now a 5/4 thanks to the Liege. Next, we have Thunderclap Wyvern, which we've already seen. Some people pronounce this Wyvern. I know it's, probably one of those is correct. I've said it both ways. It has flash, of course. So does our Githzerai Monk. So does the Smirky Spelljacker. But now let's look at one of the biggest, most important characters in Magic. It's Teferi, Mage of Zhalfir. Teferi is 2 and triple blue for a 3/4 wizard with flash that says creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield have flash. So that means we can cast all of our creature spells with flash because creature cards in our hand aren't on the battlefield. Creature cards on top of our library that we can see with Errant and Giada aren't on the battlefield. And Teferi says each opponent can cast spells only at any time they can cast a sorcery. So that means they can cast any spells they want, but only during their own main phase when the stack is empty. We're the only one who can flash things in. We're the only one that can act at instant speed. This is a 3/4 flash wizard for 5 mana, but completely worth it, especially in this deck. Just another way for our creatures to come out with flash. Next, we have the Wandering Rescuer from Duskmourn. 3 and double white for a 3/4 human samurai noble with flash, but also with Convoke. So we can tap our creatures to pay for the mana of the Wandering Rescuer's cost. We can either tap them for generic mana or tap them to pay mana of a color that they are. So Githzerai Monk, we could tap for white. Smirking Spelljacker, we could tap for blue, which is not going to help us for the Wandering Rescuer. Thunderclap Wyvern, we could tap for white or blue. So essentially, white, probably white, generic mana, that sort of thing. And the Wandering Rescuer is a 3/4 with double strike that says other tapped creatures you control have hexproof. So that works great with the Convoke, because we might want to say, well, we've got the Rescuer in our hand, and we have 4 mana up, and our commander is untapped. Maybe our opponent tries to remove our commander, we tap our 4 lands and use our commander for the 5th pip in Wandering Rescuer. Wandering Rescuer enters, and now our commander is tapped and therefore has hexproof. So this is a great way for us to protect our creatures, either because they've been attacking or because we use them to convoke the Wandering Rescuer. So a little bit of like a surprise effect, and one that's going to keep going. Plus 3/4 double strike. We've seen the Planetar and how it can change who's getting attacked. We've seen the Transcendent Dragon and how we can flash it in and steal someone's spell. We've seen Angel of the Dire Hour, which just exiles attacking creatures. We've also seen Herald of Eternal Dawn, which makes it so we're not going to lose the game, at least yet. But now, Hullbreaker Horror. This should be called Backbreaker Horror, because it's just so... yeah, it's just a lot to deal with every time it comes out. For 5 and double blue, this is a 7/8 Kraken Horror with Flash that cannot be countered. And it says whenever you cast a spell, any spell, choose up to 1. Either return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So that second choice, we can hit our own non-land permanents. If we wanted to, I don't know, put the Wandering Rescuer back in our hand, and then be able to convoke it back out to make some things tapped down so that they have hexproof, we could do that. But generally, Hullbreaker Horror says, is there a spell on the stack you don't like? Cast a spell of your own, and you can put that spell back in the controller's hand. Is there a non-land permanent on the battlefield you don't like? Cast a spell, put it back in its hand. This is it's a mandatory trigger, and it says choose up to 1, so you don't always have to do it, but there's nothing wrong with just consistently bouncing all the stuff that is annoying you on the battlefield, and maybe holding up mana to flash things in, which you're probably going to do anyway, so that when you flash them in, you're casting a spell probably when there's another spell on the stack. So you can take that spell and put it back in its owner's hand as well. Just deny people mana because they're casting spells and they're having to recast them, or deny them their permanents. Maybe do that to clear away blockers for you or for someone else. Hullbreaker Horror is absolutely something that should be dealt with, so it's good removal bait, but you can also use it politically in a deck like this. You know, flash in a creature on opponent B's turn when they're being attacked by opponent A, because you made the deal with opponent B to bounce one of opponent A's attackers. So even if opponent A is going to replay it this same turn, they sure can't attack with it this turn. Yeah, Hullbreaker Horror can do a lot for you. It's worth the 7 mana. Finally, in our game plan, we're going to look at our tokens, which we have seen all but one of so far. Skycat Sovereign, we can pay 4 to make a 1/1 flyer. Fairy Formation, we can pay 4 to make a 1/1 flyer and draw a card. And Emeria Angel, we just get a 1/1 flyer when we play a land. But we also have Donald, Herald of Wings, from the Crimson Vow Commander decks. For 2 and double blue, we get a 3/3 Human Wizard, a legend, that says whenever you cast a non-legendary creature spell with flying, you may copy it, except the copy is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Do this only once each turn. So that seems like it's not very powerful. It's just making 1/1 spirits, the same way that we're getting 1/1 birds whenever the Emeria Angel triggers. But these are copies of the creature, that the non-legendary flyer that came in. So let's say we make a copy of Skycat Sovereign. It's still going to get +1/+1 for each creature with flying. Each other creature with flying. So Donald, we cast the Sovereign, let's say. It comes in as a 1/1. Donald lets us make a copy of it. It's also a 1/1. They're both giving each other a bonus, so they're both 2/2s. Maybe we do the same with the Fairy Formation on a different turn. We get a 1/1 flying Fairy Formation that still lets us pay 3 and a blue to make a 1/1 fairy and draw a card. If we were to get another copy of Hullbreaker Horror, it would be a 1/1 flying Hullbreaker Horror with all the same benefits and abilities of the Hullbreaker Horror. So Donald is a great way to double things up, only once per turn, but it doesn't say do this only once on each of your turns. So when we're flashing our flyers in, If Donald's on the battlefield, we'll make a copy every opponent's turn, up to once, every opponent's turn. So we flash in Hullbreaker Horror, I should say, not Hullbreacher, Hullbreaker Horror on an opponent's turn. We get a copy of it that's a 1/1. And then on our turn, we cast the Emiria Angel, we get another Emiria Angel. So Donald is doing a lot for us in this deck. So we have seen our flyers, our flash creatures, and their token generators, and that is most of our game plan. Before we get into the other types of cards that are contributing to the game plan, let's talk about our big categories of support in this area. Specifically, card advantage spells, which I've labeled draw here. I just do that as a shorthand for myself. It doesn't mean these are all draw spells, it just means this is the section for card advantage. So we've seen Spectral Sailor, we can pay 4 to draw a card. Mind Stone is really more of a ramp piece, but it can draw us a card. For 2 generic, we get an artifact that taps for a single colorless, or we can pay 1, tap, and sacrifice the Mind Stone to draw a card. That's something that if we're desperate for cards we can do. Maybe we'll do it late in the game when we don't need more mana. Just nice, flexible card. Dictated Crufix makes everyone draw extra cards. Midnight Clock is another ramp piece that can help us draw eventually. For 2 and a blue, we get an artifact that taps for blue. We can pay 2 and a blue to put an hour counter on it, and hour counters don't do anything inherently, they're just used by the clock. And it says, at the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. That's not each of your upkeeps, that's everyone's upkeeps. And then, when the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards, exile Midnight Clock. So that means normally, this would happen on the 3rd turn after we play it, because it's going to get an hour counter on each of our opponent's turns and then on ours. So that's 4 for the first turn cycle, 8 for the second, and the 12th hour counter at the start of ours. Unless we have spent mana to put more counters on it, which maybe we would. Remember, this doesn't tap, putting the hour counters on it, so we can tap it for blue to activate its own ability. And when that happens, it's worth noting that not only are you going to shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library and draw 7 cards, that's you shuffling your library and then drawing cards off the top. You're going to have a brand new, fresh, big, full hand, and maybe something new on top that you can use to cast with Errant and Giada. So anything that manipulates the top of your library, even in a dramatic way like Midnight Clock, it's pretty good. We've seen Vega, and how Vega can draw us cards whenever we cast spells from somewhere other than our hand. Winged Words is a classic from M20. For 2 and a blue, it's a sorcery that says draw 2 cards, so it's just divination. But it costs 1 less if you control a creature with flying. So 2 mana, draw 2, seems good to me, and it goes with the theme. Look at that bird. We've seen our Fireman Commando. It lets us draw when we attack with 2 or more creatures. But now let's talk about Sally Sparrow. Sally is from the Doctor Who product. For 2, a white, and a blue, we get a 2/3 Human Detective, a legendary creature. This is one of the very few creatures in the deck that doesn't have flash or flying. But she says we can cast creature spells as though they had flash, so there's a good reason for her to be here. In addition, whenever 1 or more creatures you control leave the battlefield, investigate. This triggers only once per turn. So technically, investigate means make a clue, we can pay 2 and sacrifice the clue to draw a card. Technically this can draw us cards, but the real card advantage of this is the ability, it's one more way for us to cast creatures with flash. This is taking advantage of the card advantage inherent to our commander. If our commander has a card, if we have a card on top of our deck that we would like to cast, but it's not our turn and we need flash, Sally gives us access to that. So really the card advantage part of her is the clue thing, but being able to cast things with flash really helps. I only didn't put her in the flash section because she herself doesn't have flash. Just worth noticing. We've seen Fairy Formation, how it can draw us cards when it makes tokens. Smirking Spelljacker and Transcendent Dragon both give us access to another card, even though it was our opponent's card, so that's card advantage. And then Dreamtrawler, of course, it draws cards for us every time it attacks. So that's our card advantage section. Let's talk about acceleration, which again I've just called ramp here. So everyone knows Soul Ring. Costs 1, it taps for 2, we want it. Wayfarer's Bauble is really cool. I like this card because it feels like, because the new Lander tokens from Edge of Eternities work like a Wayfarer's Bauble. This costs 1 mana for an artifact, and then for 2 tap and sack it, we get to Rampant Growth. We search for a basic, put it into the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So this helps us get exactly the color we need in our 2-color deck, and it's cheap. We can cast it earlier on while we're waiting to get up to our commander. Arcane Signet is probably going to go in most of these decks. For 2 generic mana, it taps for a mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so it's a 2-mana rock for whatever colors we need. Sounds great. The same is true of a lot of these other cards. Azorius Signet is a 2-mana rock that you have to pay a mana into, but it puts 2 out. So you're tapping 2 permanents and getting 2 mana, so it's still good. And it gives us one of each of the colors we need. Next we have Marble Diamond and Sky Diamond, which are the same card but for different colors. For 2 generic, they come in tapped, and they tap for a color. Marble for white, Sky for blue. So 2-mana rocks, even though they come in tapped, we can certainly use that. Same is true for Mindstone, which we've already seen, comes in untapped, and Ornithopter of Paradise, which doesn't come in untapped, but we can't tap it for mana the first turn. So that's 6 2-mana rocks that are pretty helpful to us. We've seen the Midnight Clock, which is a 3-mana rock for just blue, and now Dazzling Theater and Prop Room. I'll give a little bit of a zoom on it. It's not much of one, sorry. This is one of the room enchantments from Duskmourn. It comes in as one side or the other depending on whichever you've cast, and then it will have, let's say you cast the Dazzling Theater for 3 and a white. When it enters, Dazzling Theater is unlocked, which means it has this ability. You can later, at sorcery speed, even on the same turn, unlock this side for 2 and a white, and you'll have both effects. So it's sort of like a split spell, but it's a permanent spell, and you can get both sides. You just have to get one first, and then at sorcery speed, get the next one. So this is in the ramp section, the acceleration section, because Dazzling Theater gives all of our creature spells Convoke. We're running a lot of creature spells, so we want to be able to tap our other creatures to convoke them out. And if we want to be able to do that at flash speed, Prop Room helps us, because it says untap each creature you control during each other player's untap step. So if we're able to cast our spells at flash speed, either because we have something like High Fate's Trickster or Last Word Phantom, we can do that on our opponent's turns and convoke our creatures out, and then just untap them again and do them on the next opponent's turn. Or maybe we're casting a creature spell that just has flash inherently. That'll work too. All right, that covers our acceleration. Let's look at interaction, which again I've just called removal. Interaction looks like this. We start with Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. They are essentially the same spell with one difference. They're both 1 white mana, they are both instants, and they both exile target creature, but the kickback given is different. Swords to Plowshares gives the exiled creature's controller life equal to that creature's power, and Path to Exile gives the exiled creature's controller a chance to Rampant Growth, so they get a basic. Both are great. Cathar Commando, like we've talked about before, can remove artifacts and enchantments. Lofty Denial is one of our counterspells. Don't run a lot of counterspells. I know some people don't enjoy them, so I tend to go a little bit lighter on them, but Lofty Denial is 1 and a blue for an instant that says counter target spell unless its controller pays a single generic mana. So it's a more expensive Force Spike or Mana Tithe. But if you control a creature with flying, counter that spell unless its controller pays 4 instead. This is not the strongest possible counterspell we could run. It might even be better to just run actual factual counterspell here. But this is part of the theme, and it's very inexpensive for a counterspell, so in the sense of a currency. So that's why we've got Lofty Denial in here. Similarly is No More Lies. 1 and a blue for an instant that says counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 generic mana. And if we do counter it, we exile it instead of letting it go to its owner's graveyard. So another, it's mana leak in our colors. So again, a soft counterspell, something that we can say, look, I could have run something much more powerful than this, and I didn't. This is just a good removal spell. I had to hit you somehow. And notice that both of these counter spells can counter any type of spell. It's not like something that can only counter a creature spell, do like an Essence Scatter or something along those lines. So easily upgradable, but not bad and not expensive for spells you don't get to see it in Commander that often. We've seen Amphibian Downpour. It is removal, even though they get to keep their creature, because their creature doesn't do much anymore. It's just a 1/1 frog. Emergency Eject. I've started running this rather than Stroke of Midnight, which is my answer to things like Generous Gift or Beast Within, because this can only hit non-land permanents, but, well, we'll just read it. For 2 and a white, it's an instant that says destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a lander token. Lander tokens are Wayfarer's Baubles as a token. Pay 2, tap, sack them, and you get to Rampant Growth. So this doesn't hit lands, which is fine. I'm not trying to do any land destruction with my spells, but it can hit any other non-land permanent for just 3 mana, and they get something out of it, but it's not, a 3/3 Elephant or a 1/1 human from Stroke of Midnight. It's a lander token. Yes, they're going to get land out of it, but they've got to pay for it, and they've got to spend their time doing that. So I think Emergency Eject is a really great removal spell for Commander decks of this power level and budget. We've seen the Spelljacker and how it can stop spells being cast. Transcendent Dragon can as well, and of course Hullbreaker Horror is repeatable removal in the form of bouncing spells and non-land permanents. We've seen our interaction now. Let's talk about how we get things off the board permanently. Or not permanently, but en masse. So we've seen Angel of the Dire Hour and how it can exile all attacking creatures. Aetherize, for 3 and a blue, is an instant that bounces all attacking creatures. So this is another gentle wrath that doesn't even exile those creatures, it just puts them back in our opponent's hand. And that can absolutely brick someone's strategy. But it's also a very, simple, weak wrath. They reprinted it in Foundations, as an uncommon. This is a solid tempo play that will definitely win you the game sometimes, as opposed to something much more expensive that admittedly comes with a big body. And then Time Wipe. I really like Time Wipe as an Azorius colored spell. For 2, double white and a blue, it's a sorcery that says return a creature you control to its owner's hand, then destroy all creatures. So this probably bounces our best creature or our commander. If we want to bounce our Hullbreaker Horror because we want to use it again, put it back in our hand, destroy everything else. We want to bounce our commander so we don't have to pay commander tax when we recast them, I should say. Bounce them, destroy everything else. Time Wipe is a great one for this deck, especially because people are going to expect a blue-white deck to have Wraths in it. Time Wipe is a reasonable 5-mana Wrath. And it saves us a little bit. So yeah. Alright, let's move on to the sections that contribute to our game plan without being a core part of it, starting with our Anthems. We've seen all but one of these. The Skyhunter Strike Force isn't exactly an Anthem, but giving all of our creatures melee can act similarly. Thistledown Liege is a double Anthem for our white and our blue. Thraben Watcher gives all of our non-token creatures +1/+1 and Vigilance, and Thunderclap Wyvern gives +1/+1 to all of our flyers. And then Gravitational Shift. Gravitational Shift is 3 blue for an enchantment that says creatures with flying get +2/+0, creatures without flying get -2/-0. So some of our creatures are getting hit with that second one, but most of our opponent's creatures are getting hit with it. And most of our creatures are getting hit with this bonus. So we have a permanent Trumpet Blast on Gravitational Shift. Yeah, and of course, Empyrean Eagle should be in this section. So we'll put it there right now. There we go. Because of course it gives all of our creatures with flying +1/+1. Great. 6 Anthems. All right. Now we'll talk about our synergy cards. Cards that work with the things we're doing in this deck already. So Lofty Denial works because we have a bunch of flyers. Rally of Wings we haven't seen. For 1 and a white, it's an instant that untaps all of our creatures and gives all of our creatures with flying +2/+2 until end of turn. It's an Anthem effect that only goes for 1 turn, so I put it under synergy. But being able to untap all of our creatures, that might just be enough if we're able to use that to convoke things out with our Prop Room card. Yeah. We can use this as a surprise to block. We can use this as a surprise to untap after our after our combat step, yeah, Rally of Wings is really solid. Final Word Phantom gives our things flash. Winged Words works with our flyers. Donald works with our flyers, giving us additional flyers. High-Fate Trickster gives us flash. Leyline of Anticipation is here. For 2 and double blue, it says we may cast spells as though they had flash, similar to High-Fate Trickster and these more conditional Final Word Phantoms, Sally Sparrow, and Teferi, which is also able to give us flash. Leyline of Anticipation also has the Leyline effect, which is if it is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. You don't even have to wait for your first turn. It just starts in play before the first player takes their turn. So yeah. We've seen Gravitational Shift. It works because it's helpful to all of our flyers, and Archetype of Imagination gives all of our creatures flying and makes everyone else's creatures lose flying. So synergistic in that way. Finally, we look at our protection section, which we may have seen all of already. We have. Jubilant Skybonder makes all of the spells that target our flyers cost more. Portal Manipulator and Windshaper Planetar can change what creatures are attacking who. Restoration Angel can flicker something to protect it. Windborne Muse gives us a Ghostly Prison effect. Wandering Rescuer can give our creatures hexproof. Dazzling Theater and Prop Room is in the protection section because we can use it to, with Prop Room, untap each creature we control during each player's untap step, which means we sort of have pseudo-vigilance, so that's a little bit protective. Definitely protective, though, is Herald of the Eternal Dawn, so we can't lose the game and our opponents can't win. And of course, Absolute Virtue gives us protection from our opponents. So, those are the cards in the deck that are spells. We're going to spend a little bit of time going over our lands. We will start with these basic lands. We're a little bit heavier on blue, just by a little bit, so we have one more island than plains, and of course we're using New Capenna arts. Next is the Azorius Chancery. Bounce lands help us hit our land drops, and they can tap for 2, so we want to run those. We've got lots of basics, so we're running Glacial Forest as our check land. It will usually come in untapped. If we wanted to upgrade this, I think that slow lands like Deserted Beach from Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow are a little bit more consistent in Commander because games tend to go longer. So if we want a conditional tap land that is more likely to come in untapped, maybe you would consider it an upgrade to go to a Deserted Beach or maybe a side grade. Next we have this Filter Land, which is Skycloud Expanse. It is just Azorius Signet as a land, so it gives us what we need. Next we're running 7 Fixing Lands. We, of course, are running Command Tower because it comes in untapped and can tap for either white or blue. We're running Path of Ancestry because it comes in tapped, but it can tap for white or blue. And when we cast a spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry one. Obviously, our commander shares a creature type with itself. So if we cast Errant and Giada, pardon me, not Etrata, different card. Errant and Giada with Path of Ancestry's mana, we get to scry one. And we have 8 other humans and 8 other angels that we can use to get that same scry effect. We have here Temple of the False God, which I think is great. It doesn't tap for anything unless we have 4 other lands in play, but once it does, it's a Soul Ring. That's just good advancement for us. And then we have some soft fetches. Evolving Wilds, play it, tap it, sack it, go find a basic island or basic plains. Broker's Hideout and Obscura Storefront are both from New Capenna, and they do a similar thing. We can't hold up the effect because they sacrifice themselves on entry, but they can both find a plains or an island, and when they do, we gain a life. And finally, Myriad Landscape comes in tapped. It taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack it, to go find 2 basics that share a land type. So 2 plains or 2 islands in this deck. It is a little slow, but it's ramp on a land, and that's not nothing. We have a Hinge Gate pathway as our pathway. I think the pathways are great. They're not as cheap as some of the other lands, obviously, but it can come in and tap for white, or come in and tap for blue. Pretty good. And we're running Temple of Enlightenment as a scry land, because being able to manipulate the top of our library is really helpful, especially in a deck when we can play off the top of it. If we see something on top when we scry that we can't cast, Or if we already knew that something was on top that we can't cast, we just go ahead and scry it to the bottom, and it's gone. We could upgrade this if we wanted to Meticulous Archive and get the Surveil land version of it, but this is good too, or we might run both. I should also mention that for these fetch lands, it's great to be able to play a fetch land or crack a fetch land when there's something on top of our library that we can't cast with our commander's abilities, because we're rolling the dice that we'll have something else on top, but it's probably a better than even chance that we will hit something. Next, I should say last, are these utility lands that we're running. I like to run Demolition Field as my one source of land destruction, because it doesn't put someone behind on land, but it does get rid of your Maze of Iths, your Glacial Chasms, your creature lands that might be dangerous. Demolition Field taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 tap and sack it to blow up a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and then they may find a basic, put it into play untapped, and we can find a basic and put it into play untapped. So even though we're paying 2 for this and tapping it, that's us tapping down 3 lands, but we get 1 back, so we're only sort of down 2. And it gets something annoying off the battlefield. Next, we have Emergence Zone from War of the Spark. We can tap it for colorless mana, or we can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice it. And this turn, we can cast spells as though they had flash. It doesn't have to be our turn. We can do this on our opponent's turn, cast things off the top of our library or out of our hand, and we're casting things with flash. So great. Next up, we have Moorland Haunt. It comes in, taps for colorless, or we can pay a white and a blue and tap it, and exile a creature card from our graveyard to make a 1/1 white flying spirit creature token, which is only in here as sort of a mana sink. Like, we don't have much that can bring our creatures back from the graveyard, so we're not using our graveyard much, so we might as well use it for something. We can turn whatever creatures we've lost into a flyer, and those flyers will gain benefits from our other creatures that care about flyers, or other effects that care about flyers. Next up, we have a creature land. It's Restless Anchorage from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. It comes in tapped, but it taps for white or blue, and we can pay 1 a white and a blue to make it a 2/3 white and blue bird with flying until end of turn. That is still a land. And if we attack with it, we make a map token. Map tokens, of course, let a creature explore if we pay 1, tap, and sack them. Exploring is very good in this deck because not only would it mean, oh, we see a land on top with Errant and Giada, we're going to use this map token to get that land off the top. Oh, we see something that's not a land, but it's not a creature with flash or flying, we can at least put it in our graveyard. And of course, we would get a counter on whichever creature we've targeted with the map token. So yeah, Explorer is an excellent effect in this deck, and Restless Anchorage is our source for it. Finally, maybe not the best include in this deck, but I think this card is cool, and it's from New Capenna. Skybridge Towers is a tap land that taps for white or blue, or if we need to, we can pay 2 a white, a blue, and tap and sacrifice this to draw a card. There are better lands that you can sacrifice to draw cards, but there aren't any others from New Capenna, so this is what we went with. And that about sums it up for Beating of Wings. Again, I'm making a deck for each of the March of the Machine legends, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or a deck style. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe, and remember, magic is fun. You should play more Magic.